So it's all in the eye of the beholder, your relationship with the Detroit Tigers. Where are you at? Because this feels like an abusive relationship that you know better than to get back into the relationship. And Tigers took 3 of 4 from them. Now, 4 games is not a great sample size, but we're halfway through the season. And this is the first time, we're not halfway. We're close to halfway through the season. This is the first time these two teams played. And just when you thought the Tigers, get out the paddles, they're done, they go do that. Now, it wasn't a clean sweep, which was obviously an unrealistic ask, but taking 3 of 4 isn't completely insignificant. So, if you want to look at the team, and I guess it depends what you do, you can choose to see what you want to see. Do you see a team that's 10 games under 500, or do you see a team that just took 3 of 4 from the division leader? And I think they bottomed out at 7.5 games behind, but now they're 5 games behind. After that weekend series with a dreadful Kansas City team coming to town, and then a series with the Twins after that looming here in Detroit. Thing about it was, I had set for me personally, Gator, the meager goal of getting to this Twin series within striking distance, which they didn't do. They were I don't know if it was 7 or 7.5 going back. I guess it was 7 going into the series, but I think they got to be 7.5 back at one point. But anyway, the point is, that was the meager goal. They didn't reach that goal. The funny thing is, they could actually reach the goal of being within striking distance when this 3-game set starts. So it was, can they be within striking distance when they're playing the 7 games in 10 days? And the answer felt like no. I guess technically if you're 7 games back with 7 games coming up, you could sweep them all and tie them. But I'm talking about trying to keep the reality guardrails up. They could get themselves to this Twin series when later this week. This could be interesting. Could be fun. So don't want to get. It's up to you, right? It's up to you, the individual, how you feel about this team. I'm still not calling them back. I don't care how good they look this weekend. I can't do it.
Why?
Because unfortunately, the overwhelming thing I'm seeing is the 10 games under, which, every time you talk about who's going to return, you're right. And I'm also convinced that just because of the way it happens in sports, they'll lose somebody else in that time. And it's not being doom and gloom. It's just the reality. Everybody suffers injuries throughout the season, and their margin for error is so thin. I just can't see a sustainable path to getting to the top of this division. And I've tried very hard, Gator. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but that's where I am personally with my relationship.
Well, try to remember why they fell back. When it
was Eduardo and Riley Green. When they went down, I said the fairy tale's over.
It was that, and it was also who they played, right? They played Atlanta, they played Arizona, they played Philadelphia. These were 3 really good teams in baseball. And they fell back, and with those key injuries, it was predictable that, okay, this is going to be a rough go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of like they got knocked down, and now they're starting to pick themselves back up and say, okay, hang on, we can play so much better. Okay, we lost a couple big pieces here, and that sucks. But let's look around this room, and everybody raise your hand if you think you've done the most you can do on this team. And nobody can raise their hand. Because offensively, they've been absolutely pathetic and impotent at the plate. They pulled themselves up. They started to hit. They started to drive in some runs. They weren't winning games, but at least they were hitting better. Then they started to win a couple games. And now they win 3 out of 4 against Minnesota. And the bats are there. The bats weren't there in one of the games when they lost 2-0. But the other 3 games, they showed up. And the power is there. Torkelson had 3 home runs in the week. Keep talking about it. He's going to have these weeks where he has 3 home runs. Here it is. Baez was waking up. He had triples and stuff and a home run. Veerling comes back. He was another guy, maybe underrated, who comes back off the injured list that deserves to start in this lineup, and they missed him. He has 2 home runs in a game. I think the most amazing part of what we saw over the weekend was that they won 2 games at Minnesota while using bullpen starts. They used the opener in 2 of these wins. They exhausted the entire bullpen, and they won both of those games over the weekend. The game they lost, by the way, Joey Wentz pitched out of his mind. They lost 2-0 in that game. They got 2 runs and lost. So I think there are signs that, okay, hang on. We're pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps. We're starting to hit. we know we could play better, and now the schedule is going to lighten up with Kansas City. But we took care of business at Minnesota. When we return home, we got to take care of business at home. And if we do, we're going to find ourselves in a pretty good position while we welcome some other guys back over the next week or two.
So, I mean, to be fair, too, last week when we talked about this, I don't think you had broken up with them.
No.
You were still hanging on to the relationship, and I'm hanging on to my flag was planted there, but I can't be wrong.
There's something special about this guy.
Kang, what's your relationship with the Tigers right now?
Well, I wish I could be a hopeless romantic like Gator, but I'm not. I mean, yeah, keep dreaming the dream, and I'm not going to stop you from feeling how you feel. But for me and my relationship with the Tigers is, I know this isn't going to end well, but there's fun times. This is we're not in a relationship. We're in a text me you up, in the middle of the night after the bar, and I might answer, and we might have a good time. And then we'll realize why we're not together at some point, because this is going to get rocky again. The same fights are going to happen. The same stuff is going to. So we're not fully committed to each other, but we're here for a good time, not a long time. So I'm going to enjoy the ride, whether it's good or bad, for the summer. Mm-hmm. And when fall comes around, I'll be looking elsewhere.
All right.
So, but I think it's important to enjoy the ride because they are still within striking distance. Even if you don't think it's going to happen like you or I, Doug, I can see it. I don't believe it, but I can kind of see. But I'm also not forgetting why we're not together.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things. Do you want how much do you want this relationship? And if people really, really want the relationship, I'm not mad at you. I mean, I don't want to get too vested in it again. But I got to be honest. If they gain another game in the Kansas City series.
Don't fall for it, man. Do not fall for it. Well, not again.
But here's the thing. While the Tigers are playing Kansas City, Minnesota is hosting the Red Sox.
I know.
Now, the Red Sox may be, the bottom team in the East, but they're still above 500 because the East is the beast. So the Twins have to play the teams the Tigers already played.
I know.
And the Tigers already struggled with.
I know.
So let's see what happens here. Interesting. You got a 3-game series against Kansas City?
He's the worst relationship counselor ever, this guy. This guy's trying to get me back into this bad relationship.
You're seeing two therapists, and we're telling you the opposite things. Doug doesn't know what to do.
Look, the Twins play not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 games against the Red Sox.
Yeah.
I'm saying she looks good, and she's talking to you.
You've been burned before, my friend. Was it shame on me? Fool me once. You can't fool me again.
Won't get fooled again.